Come take my hand and see the world around you. The time is right, just let the light surround you. And step by step you feel it coming alive, the feeling deep down inside.
The best memories are made when you take the road less traveled. Visit wanderingbutnotlost.com for some inspiration. Today on Wanderings In, we are back at National Park Week 2020. We're going to call this Ponderings In today because we're not really getting out and wandering or looking at things. We're going to talk about the national parks, and we're going to just go through some fun facts about what's going on, not what's going on, but what about the National Park Service in general. So let's just jump in. Let's get through these 20, and then we can get on with going back and watching some of the awesome live streams that have been happening from the National Park Service from the different parks. I'm telling you, I have seen so many great live streams this week. It's been fantastic. Not to mention, I forget, We Heart National Parks, I think, was a new Facebook page that the National Park Foundation put together. Yeah, hello, Sheldon. Put up, and it's been great to see people just post all their pictures. It's been really, really cool. That parks or pics and recs site they have up, beautiful images in there. I've submitted 3 articles to that have been posted, which have been really cool. A couple pictures. It's just good to see everyone's, just the love that people have for the national parks is really cool. So anyway, so let's get started. Now, Jan, this first one, I know that you're going to know the answer to this, although I hate to put you on the spot because that's very nerve-wracking to put someone on the spot like that. So I apologize in advance. But what was the very first national park?
I think it's Yosemite.
It's Yellowstone, actually. Yosemite.
I mean, no, I meant Yellowstone.
Yeah.
Yellowstone.
That's right.
The other Y.
Yeah, exactly. Yellowstone, founded in 1872. Now, the majority of Yellowstone sits in Wyoming, but there's also a little sliver of it that's in Idaho and Montana, so they can both claim that the park is in their state as well. Okay, as you know, Jan O'Brien, I am a big advocate of the Park Visitor Center. The Visitor Center to me is a place that we go in no matter what park we go into for a couple of reasons. 1, to get information. And 2, which I know you'll appreciate, Jan O'Brien, you can get your passport stamped. Exactly. So Visitor Center is a must-do. No matter where you are, how many times you go. I mean, we've been to Yosemite a million times, but we go to the visitor center there all the time. So go to the visitor center. Any guess on how many visitor centers there are in the national park system? Just
isn't there one for every park?
No, there's multiple in every park. So this is a high number. This number is high.
200?
Higher, Bob.
300?
880.
No way.
Yeah.
How many parks are there?
You know what? That's one of those things that's hard to.
Is it a park? Is it a monument?
Exactly. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's 50 something, like 56 or something actual national parks, but then there's so many national monuments, seashores, protected areas, all of that stuff. So, so you just stumped the panel on that one. So nearly 880 or right around 880 visitor centers. I love that stat, and I want to go to every single one of them because I think they're awesome. I love talking to rangers. It's so cool. Because they have a passion for their job, and it's a neat thing. Mm-hmm. Okay, Jan O'Brien, did you know the national parks contain at least 247 species of threatened or endangered plants and animals, more than 75,000 archaeological sites, and nearly 27,000 historic and prehistoric structures?
No.
So they are. There's more than just getting out and taking a scenic drive. They are preserving our heritage and our history and our planet, really, our animals and botany as well. So pretty cool. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park is the most visited national park in the United States, with over 9 million guests per year, followed by the Grand Canyon, which is number 2 on the list, which is like over 4 million or so guests a year. So
let's talk about Great Smoky. You know why? I think it's because it's easily accessible, and there are so many. It goes through so many states, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's Tennessee, and it's beautiful. It's like easy to get to, and it's on the East Coast. There's tons of people there where you have to really drive to get to Sequoia and Yosemite and some of them, right?
I think that's exactly why for that, and also because it is around such a huge population base, and you can get there and do so many different recreational activities in the Smoky Mountains. You know, there's everything you can think of as far as outdoorsmanship goes there, and they have beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful all year round as well. So it's open all year round and it's easy to access, and the weather's good. So yeah, absolutely. And I've never been. I mean, I've driven through parts, but I've never really technically gone there to be in the park. I've never been to the visitor center there. So Smoky Mountains are absolutely on my list. So The largest park in the lower, 48 in the contiguous United States, the 48 is Death Valley National Park, stretching 5,300 square miles or 3.4 million acres is Death Valley.
And quite beautiful, actually. People don't think it's uniquely beautiful.
You drove through there one time.
I did, and I stopped and checked out some of the places that you told me to go look at.
I have to agree. It is absolutely beautiful. And if you go in the spring or early summer, the wildflowers there are amazing. And it's not like driving, and you can see it a little bit from your car, but you have to actually get out of your car and go look, because they're the most fragile, beautiful little tiny wildflowers. I've got a couple pictures over on the website at wanderingbutnotlost.com. You should go check them out. It's really amazing. Now, the smallest national park actually is Hot Springs National Park in Arkansas.
You've been there, haven't you?
I have been there. It's actually about 5,500 acres in total, and it's a neat little area. It was actually the first federally protected piece of land in the United States back in 1832, but it wasn't named a national park until 1921. It is known for its beauty of the surrounding mountains and everything. There's some hiking trails there, but what it really is known for, back in the day, they had a bunch of bathhouses there, and the people from the north would come down to get cured, of their ailments. They'd go down and they would soak and they would steam in the hot springs. It's really amazing. A few of those bathhouses are still, well, for the longest time, a lot of them were there, but none of them were open. They were in disrepair, but they've gone in the last 20 years or so, and they've actually updated and modernized a few of them and actually reopened them back up. I actually went in one day and did the whole bathhouse experience, and it was neat to be in there, because the building was just, the architecture and the style of all of the fixtures and everything was really cool. That is a weird experience. People drying you off, not my deal.
Okay.
So I wouldn't do it again, but it was an interesting thing, and it was neat to do that, because you kind of really took you back to a different time, because it's certainly not like that anymore. Okay, Mount Mckinley in Alaska, in Denali National Park, is the highest point in any of the national parks. I had forgotten how tall Mount Mckinley was. It's 20,302 feet tall. That is high. Mount Whitney here in California, which is the tallest mountain in the 48, is 14,444 or something like that. So it's 6,000 feet shorter, which is amazing if you're a hiker. That is a huge elevation gain right there. Crazy.
You guys haven't been to Alaska, have you?
No, never been there.
Is that on your list?
It is. Well, the pictures that you took when you were up there, they're amazing.
Well, I would want to go back, because we never got off the cruise ship, but to go to Denali or to check out the interior of Alaska would be awesome.
I know, because it just looks so beautiful. Because you think of it all just being as this one big huge snow sheet. It's not. No. It's beautiful, lush. The tundra. It's amazing. So, Mount McKinley, highest place in the national parks, and there's two national parks located north of the Arctic Circle. So this would be a kick to go to sometime. The Arctic National Park and the Kobuk Valley National Park. They're both obviously in Alaska and very high up there, but it would be neat to go and see those national parks. I don't have any I've never done much research on that, so I need to go out and do that before National Park Week is over, while I'm on this national park kick, and go check those out as well. Now, one of the hottest temperatures on Earth, and I guess where this is going to go back to, was recorded in 1913 in Death Valley National Park, registering 134 degrees.
Whoa!
Yeah, and Death Valley also, it's like this everything. It's got the most land, it's the hottest. It also boasts the lowest point in the Western Hemisphere, Badwater Basin. It's 282 feet below sea level.
Practically to the center of the Earth.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Did you go by Badwater when you went through there? Do you remember?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I can't remember the names of the cool places right now off the top of my head.
It's kind of cool, because there's a little boardwalk that walks out kind of over the salt flats there, and it is just really a different area than when you get a little bit farther north, and there's sand dunes and everything up there. So Death Valley is very diverse, and it's the way it's laid out as well. True. Okay, one of my favorite states for national parks, Utah. It has 5 national parks, and they're all within driving distance of each other. Now, it wouldn't really be much of a day trip, because you wouldn't see much, but I guess you could randomly do that if you wanted to all in a day.
Only if you wanted to stamp your passport and say you've been there.
Right, but if you want to go hit a bunch of parks at the same time, Utah is the place to go, because they're all pretty close together there. they're all right there. Sequoia National Park's namesake trees are some of the world's largest living things on Earth, which I know Jan O'Brien loves the sequoia.
Yeah, I think it's really right there with Yosemite for me so far. It may even be my number one.
Yeah,
it's because of the trees.
I agree, because I battle that myself if I have to really choose. And the Redwoods National Park in California along the coast have some of the tallest trees. So it's tree mania in Northern California. Everglades National Park protects more than 25% of Florida's original Everglades, which is I think a pretty amazing number, considering that it didn't really get going they had a hard time getting that park actually on the map because there was so much going on down in Florida, as there always is.
Hashtag Florida.
Hashtag Heart Florida. But thankfully they've been able to do that because a lot of the wetlands have been able to kind of been reclaimed because of the Everglades National Park, coming into play. Now, this is one of my favorite little parts because I love caves so much. There's an awesome cave in Sequoia National Park called Crystal Cave. It's a small little thing, but it's just so cool. Off the beaten track, and a lot of people, they have tours that fill up and sometimes they sell out, but it's not something people go to Sequoia for, but it's a cool thing. But Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky has the longest cave system in the world with more than 3,454 mapped miles of subterranean cave hikes that you can't all go on, but they're all underneath here. Carlsbad National Caverns in New Mexico is home to the nation's deepest cave, which is 1,593 feet deep. And Wind Cave in South Dakota is the first cave to be named a national park in the world. And that is a really super cool cave. I've been there. It's right outside of Keystone, South Dakota, and there's Wind Cave. And oh my gosh, now I'm forgetting the name of the other one. Not Crystal Cave. Anyway, there's two caves that are on either side of the city. So there's two national parks there that are caves right in South Dakota. Pretty cool if you're a cave.
Question?
Yes.
Are you the Batman?
I think I might be.
The Batman.
The Batman. At 1,932 feet deep, Crater Lake National Park in Oregon is the deepest lake in the United States. And all it is, it's sunk, sitting down in the bowl of this caldera. If you've never been to Crater Lake, if you've seen pictures, it just looks like this beautiful mountain in a way. If you have been there and you really realize what the heck it is weird to think of that you're sitting on the top of this volcano and all of this water is inside the middle of that. There's a little island, which is actually and the reason why the island was actually created, because it's a caldera within a caldera. So there is anyway, it's weird when you really sit down and think of it, but the water is so blue. If you ever get a chance to go to Crater Lake, please, you've got to do that. Speaking of calderas, Yellowstone Caldera, which is funny, when I was growing up, they didn't really call Yellowstone a volcano, but now it's like the super volcano, right? It's responsible for 3 of the world's largest volcano eruptions. I didn't know that. That was kind of interesting. 3 of the 10 highest waterfalls in the world are located in Yosemite National Park. And one of them, Ribbon Falls in Yosemite, just get a reference of kind of how tall these are, is 9 times taller than Niagara Falls.
Wow.
How tall Niagara Falls is, and you multiply that 9 times, it's a pretty incredible thing, because Niagara Falls is not like a little tiny waterfall either, So it gives you a sense of how tall that is if you've never been there. Back on the volcanoes, Mauna Loa volcano in Hawaii. Volcanoes National Park is the largest volcano on the Earth.
Wow.
In terms of volume and height above its base. It contains about 19,000 cubic miles of lava. That's really comforting. And rises more than 50,000 feet above its base. So just think about that for a minute. If, let's see, Mount McKinley is 20,000 feet tall. You add 30,000 feet below that. That's how tall Mauna Loa is in height, because 30,000 of it is below it's not 20,000 feet. But if we looked at Mount McKinley, 30,000 of it would be below the water line.
Wow.
So think about it. It's a huge, gigantic thing. Mesa Verde National Park was the first national park to be recognized for works of man and acknowledgement of incredible cliff dwellings that they have there left beyond by the Pueblo Indians. So before that, prior to that, it was all just nature and scenic beauty and historic value that brought the park on. There are 25 active glaciers and more than 700 lakes of various sizes in Glacier National Park. This is the park that I think more than any of them, if you are a national park lover and you have things on your bucket list, get to Glacier as fast as you can because they predict that within the next 20 years, most of those glaciers will no longer be there anymore because of global warming. And if you want to see Glacier with glaciers, you need to get it on your bucket list. You need to get there and see it. We were there probably, gosh, it's probably been 5 years ago now, maybe a little bit more, and went on a ranger-led tour out to Grinnell Glacier. It is unbelievable. The color of the ice and the melt. Blue? I can't even describe the color. It's this light. That light blue,
fluorescent sort of, right?
Almost. It is iridescent, almost. It's
iridescent is the word I was looking for.
Really, really interesting. And the pool of water down below is just beautiful, almost like a gray blue. That if you put your finger in it, your finger would stick. You know, what I mean, it's so cool. But what's really cool about that glacier is when you're walking up, you're looking at all the landscape around you. When you're walking back and you've seen it and you've been right there by it, and you see some of the rocks that are around the glacier as it's pulling back, and you're walking back down, you have a whole different appreciation for the landscape because you know that glacier was down there. Right. And it has pulled and created all of the rubble and the topography of the land that you're walking down now. Is really an interesting experience because before you were walking on it too, but it didn't feel the same until you got there and saw the magnitude and the might of what those glaciers can really do. So I think it's incredible. Voyageurs National Park in Minnesota has 344 square miles of navigable waters for boating, canoeing, and kayaking. Minnesota is a place that I really want to go spend some time. All of that whole area up there because the water and the lakes and the trees. I was talking to our friend a couple of podcasts ago who lives in Minnesota and saying that I've always wanted to go back to New England for the fall, which would be awesome. I still want to do that, obviously, because it's just, classic stuff. But the fall in Minnesota and Michigan and Wisconsin, all around that area is really spectacular as well. I've seen one of my favorite shows is Aerial America on Smithsonian, and they have done shots of that. And it is every bit as beautiful as, in my opinion anyway, as New Hampshire or New England without all the people. So that's a place to go. And our last little tip today is just a nod to the National Park Service itself. They protect over 84 million acres of wild landscapes and historic sites in the United States with over, get this, and it would be fun to hike every mile of this, 18,000 miles of trails in the national park waiting for you to get out and wander and be forever wandering but not lost. So there is so much to do with that.
I have a question. What's the newest park?
Well, is the last national park that I know that is actual national park status happened in 1993, I think, or maybe it was 2003. It's Pinnacles National Park here in California. It's up south of the Bay Area, kind of inland from, I would say, south of Santa Cruz, kind of in that Monterey, Santa Cruz kind of area, inland a little bit. Haven't been there yet. Love to go. That made California have 9 official national parks, which now makes it the state with the most national parks. 9 national parks in California.
Oh my God, I thought I was going to stump you, but of course not. So there you go.
But Pinnacles is pretty cool. It's another one of those places. I guess, obviously national parks are always, not always, but often off the beaten track because that's where
of course.
Everything that's not on the beaten track has already been developed. So
correct.
Yeah, so you have to make an effort to go there. And I was having a hard time when we were planning a trip there one time when it first opened because we wanted to go where to stay because you can't stay like right there. You have to kind of stay somewhere and then drive over. So
I have one other question: do you think in the United States there are areas that ought to be a national park? Is there anything left that has ever come up in the because it's a big deal to save the land and to get it, it has to be an act of Congress or the president or something, right?
Well, either
name it.
Either or. The president can actually declare national monuments. So that's kind of how that whole thing started. So the actual national parks have to be declared by the Congress. But it happens all the time. Every presidency, if you go back and do some research, every presidency
wants to.
They want a legacy and they want their name on them. As a matter of fact, I believe.
Was it Roosevelt Yellowstone? Didn't it really start with Teddy Roosevelt?
Teddy's the one that really got a lot of the stuff going. But it was even before that actually is when they really started. But he was bully on the park.
An advocate,
Yeah. And I'll know, Obama did a lot of
Monuments.
seashores too. I know Bill Clinton was responsible for really expanding the boundaries of Sequoia National Park. As a matter of fact, I don't believe, because it's actually, they didn't expand the boundaries of the park, but created a national recreation area between Sequoia and Kings Canyon. So that whole area there on the Kings Highway now is technically all protected land, where before, before the 90s, that whole area there was just open public land. So, and I believe that, I forget what the Trump administration sometime this year actually did declare something a national protected some land somewhere. So yeah, it's on the, I actually, off the top of my head, I just think they just need to make sure that they are protecting the lands that we already have. Because there are some
encroaching on it. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, there are some that have been encroached on over the past, past few years that we need to really, to watch that and be good stewards of the earth, because it not only is a great place to go and wander, but it really does help create and collect and showcase our environment. And it's so wonderful for the animals to have a place where they can roam,
Absolutely. Which I believe they're probably enjoying it without all the people in their parks right now. I bet. Have you seen anything about that, or are all the wildlife just like going, "This is awesome"? Like, we don't have people here, or maybe they're missing us because
the food.
People feed them, unfortunately.
No, but I think they have. I've seen a few things from Yosemite where people, the animals are just walking around, doing their thing. You see a lot more of a mountain. A ranger had said, and I think I might have mentioned this last week and one other time we were talking about this, that the ranger is saying, it's not like there's more animals, because all these animals were just right off.
They're just visible. Yeah.
But they're down and now. Sweet Pea was saying yesterday that she was reading an article about someplace, I believe it was in Africa, or I don't know, it was someplace where there isn't as much, human activity anymore. And there were just lions laying around in the street.
I saw that. They're out on the road.
Isn't that amazing?
Prides of lions hanging out.
What's going to be interesting, and I was lamenting this fact yesterday, when the parks open back up again and people are all back in and racing around, there's going to be a lot of animals, I'm sure, that are going to be hit. So I was saying, I was doing my personal plea to the national parks to put up barriers all over the place to make people drive slow, because otherwise they're not going to. And animals who now are used to being out walking around are.
And they have to get retrained that, oh yeah, here come all these people again.
And they will. I mean, that's the way it works, but it's interesting. So,
well, great facts. I learned some things. I'll put it in my trivia for my next Trivial Pursuit. I've learned some things about the parks yet again. Thank you, sir.
Remember that game that we bought that you and Laura and I were playing when we were going up there? And the questions were so hard, we gave up.
That is really only for the true park lovers of the world.
And we're like, well, maybe this is a learning experience. Yeah, for about 5 cards until we suck so bad.
And with that.
Done. All right, everyone. Enjoy the rest of National Park Week, but national parks are more important and more worth celebrating than just 1 week a year. So make sure that you are a national park fan. If you don't have one, buy a national park pass. They support the parks.
Yes.
And you can make that money back really, really quickly, actually, if you visit too many of them. So anyway, national parks, I'm a fan. Get out there and find your park. Be forever wandering, but not